this stage. Can't wait to entertain us all once again. To the radio. Where's this? Record breaker.
Good evening, all.
Well, it's been much day, but there's the difference.
Good evening, all.
At night,
Can I sound check, please? Can somebody just say yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll be later at 7 p.m. and we're live streaming. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone, councillors, officers, and any members of the public who are watching us on YouTube. Welcome to this executive of East Herts District Council. Katie, agenda item 1 is apologies. Do we have any?
Received any apologies?
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Leaders' announcements is agenda item 2. First of all, can I remind everyone to stay on mute unless they wish to speak. If you wish to speak, please can you raise your hand, and I and Katie and William will endeavour to make sure that we see your hand go up. When we come to voting, I will explain that as we come to the first agenda item for voting for the members of the executive. I would like to please go around members of the executive so that they can you know who they are, and if each of you could just say what your portfolio is, I'd be grateful. Councillor Boylan.
Good evening, my name is Peter Boylan. I'm the Executive Member for Neighbourhoods, which is made up of housing, predominantly licensing and community safety.
Thank you. Councillor Eric Buckmaster.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, I'm Eric Buckmaster, Executive Member for Wellbeing, and the portfolio includes Hertford Theatre, the leisure facilities and parks and open spaces.
Thank you. Councillor Cutting.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is George Cutting. I'm the portfolio holder for corporate services, which includes legal and democratic services, procurement, comms, that's communications. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Goodeve.
Good evening. I'm Jan Goodeve and I'm the Executive Member for Planning and Economic Growth.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor McAndrew.
Yes, good evening. Graham McAndrew, Executive Member for Environmental Sustainability, covering parking, green waste, recycling and operations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Suzanne Rutland-Barsby.
Good evening. My portfolio is communities, which includes grants and general community matters. Also, I do training for members and members' personal matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williamson.
Good evening, I'm Jeff Williamson and I'm Executive Member for Financial Sustainability.
Right, thank you all very much indeed. Agenda item 3 are the minutes of the 19th of February executive. That's on page 7 to page 24. Can I please have any comments or inaccuracies? Councillor Curtis, I see you put something in the chat, but it would be better if you were able to say it, please.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Hazy. Yes, I noticed that my attendance is missing from the draft minutes, even though the faculty asked a couple of questions mentioned further down in the document.
Okay, thank you very much. We will make sure that that correction is made. Anything other comments on the accuracy of the minutes? If not, I am happy to propose the minutes. Councillor Williamson, I believe you will second. Okay, in terms of voting, the executive members, please put your hand up, your yellow or blue hand, because the ticks and the crosses don't last very long these days, if you are happy to accept these minutes.
That looks to be carried, Leader.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much indeed. We need to give ourselves just a few minutes because sometimes the hands don't necessarily register, so we will just allow a little bit of flexibility in making sure that everyone has the opportunity of voting. So they're carried. Is anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Okay, thank you. We now have declarations of interest. Is there anyone who wishes to declare an interest in the agenda items coming forward? No. Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, which is on page 25 to 46, is the quarterly budget. Councillor Williamson, can you introduce this, please?
Certainly, thank you, Leader. Well, this report brings us an update of the Council's financial position as viewed at the end of the third quarter, so in other words, at the end of December. On our net revenue budget, we anticipate we will finish the year with an overspend of 159,000. Now, whilst this might be considered a higher figure than we would prefer in a normal year, given the extraordinary circumstances of the last 12 months, this should be viewed in a positive light. And it is a major achievement that through the diligent husbandry of our finances by officers, we are not facing the much worse position that some other authorities are now having to contend with. This headline figure does to some extent mask that we have suffered considerable loss of income, particularly in operations due to a large fall in car park income, much of which was of course from the period we suspended car park charges. Whilst the government has provided grant funding to compensate for losses of income to the tune of 1.8 million, this does not cover the full amount, so the council is having to bear the difference. The paper also reports on the position with our capital spend. The capital budget this year is 64 million, of which 31 million has been brought forward from last year. Much of the spend is a reflection of our progress on Northgate End and Grange Paddocks. We reviewed the capital programme overall, and as a result of reprofiling to reflect when the expenditure is actually predicted to occur, 27 million is being carried forward to future years. You will note section 6 of the report, which covers our debtors. Whilst of course all efforts are made to bring in all monies owed to the council, we've recognised We need to take a realistic stance on our handling of old debts, which we deem to be uncollectible. So as part of the routine for year end, officers will identify old debts that need to be written off, and these will be brought to executive for sign off. Then from next year, any future debt write-offs will be taken through audit and governance and then to executive on a quarterly basis. So in this way, we can manage the debt position more effectively. So, Leader, we have two recommendations on page 25, which ask us to note the revenue and capital positions, but of course, able to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any comments or questions from either the executive or any members who are present? No, I can't see anything. Councillor Buckmaster. Councillor Buckmaster, you're on mute.
I think I reversed my position there. Very clever of me. Yeah, thank you, Leader, just to support the position that Councillor Williamson mentioned around debtors. I think that's a very sensible approach, bringing the whole process for the executive to take a look at and then move forward from there. So very happy with that process. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, great. Councillor Pope, is there anything you wish to add specifically on that? Although when you come to your report, you may wish to say something in any case.
Yes, I was going to mention it when I came to just give a brief summary of what the committee discussed. But I'd just like to support what has been said about the position with regard to debtors. And I think a number of them have been in existence for some while, and I think it would make sense to look at those closely and to write those off where it's appropriate. But I'll certainly mention it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much in that deed. So Councillor Williamson has proposed the paper. I am happy. Councillor Cutting, I believe you're seconding.
Yes, Leader, thank you for that. I'm very happy to second the recommendations A and B. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Executive, please can I ask you to raise a hand?
That looks to be carried unanimously, Leader.
Yep, okay, thank you very much indeed. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. Agenda item 6 is the Harlow and Gilston Garden Town Sustainability Guidance and Checklist final document for endorsement. So I will introduce this paper. This is a document that has been out for extensive consultation, both with residents, with officers and with our developers. And it puts together our expectation on sustainable development within the garden town. So this is not just Gilston, this covers all the strategic sites in the garden town itself. I think it's an extraordinary piece of work, and the officers who've put it together need to be congratulated on the work that they have done behind it. And I think also the residents themselves have also made extensive comments on this. And I think it will go a great way to making sure that the quality and the design of Gilston and also the other areas are of exceptional quality. And it's one of the suite of documents that will sit together with all the other garden town policies and documents, so to ensure that we do actually get that from our developers. This is our final document for endorsement, and I'm very happy to propose it. Do we have any comments or questions on this, please? No. Okay.
Leader, sorry, from Councillor McAndrew and Buckmaster.
Okay, Councillor McAndrew, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. As you say, it's an extraordinary document, and it covers everything really as much as can possibly be covered in the current circumstances. One of the questions I often get asked is, with the local plan and the supplementary documents, does the supplementary document get reviewed when the local plan gets reviewed, and how do they come together? Maybe if Kevin could say a few words on that.
Councillor McAndrew, I don't think it's necessarily appropriate at the moment to ask an officer to comment on this.
All right, fine.
I think it is something that you and I well know is something which is extremely important, both to East Herts as well as the Garden Town. And you are an advocate beyond advocates for sustainable development and sustainability. So thank you for that. And it does dovetail very much into the work that has been done in East Herts, as well as the work that you lead in the Hertfordshire Climate Change Group, the HCCSP, which is a gathering of all 10 districts and boroughs and the county council to look at the importance of sustainable development and the impact on climate change across Hertfordshire. So sorry to cut you off there, but I know you could answer that, so perhaps you wish to say a few more words.
Yeah, I think you're quite right with the HCCSP, the Climate Change Sustainability Partnership. And I think it's a really good document to be shared with them because it covers the 4 themes: carbon, biodiversity, transport and water. And I think the officers across the county and county council will gain a lot from it. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sure you'll make sure that they read it word for word. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so I've proposed the paper. Councillor Goody,
I wanted to say something, Leader.
Sorry, Eric. Councillor Buckmaster, my apologies.
No problem. I was just going to say, like you, I've seen earlier versions of this and I've been impressed all the way through. The layout is really good and I can see that it's intended to provide consistency across the Garden Town. I particularly like the RAG ratings in terms of whether developers will be meeting minimum requirements or net zero carbon for 2030 or 2050. And I think it would be a really good indicator as we go forward through with master planning and the detailed applications. I think that would be a really helpful guide to see how things are progressing and how things move on over time. So like you, very well written and a really useful document.
Thank you. My apologies for not seeing your hand. Councillor Goody, are you happy to second this paper?
Very happy to second the paper, Leader.
Thank you. And have I missed anyone else out? No? Okay, in that case, Executive, please can I ask you to raise your blue or yellow hand if you are happy with this paper?
Again, that's unanimously carried, Leader.
Okay, thank you. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining, just for completeness? And Kevin, sorry I didn't allow you to speak, but if you could go back to the officers and just say how impressed we all have been, and just let's make sure that those RAG ratings are absolutely adhered to, because we are building for the future. We're not building what we have been building in the last 10 years. We're building for the next 30. And I think that's a very different standard.
Absolutely, Linda. Thank you for those comments. And yes, I'll make sure the officers involved are aware of your thoughts on the document. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And obviously, if you wish to leave the meeting, then that's fine.
Thank you, Linda.
Okay, if we now move on to agenda item 7, which is the final review of scrutiny by the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny. Is Councillor Wiley with us? I can't see him. Okay, and also Councillor Stowe. Okay, let me start anyway, and then we can pick up the comments from the overview and scrutiny when they scrutinised the paper last week. I think scrutiny is absolutely critical and crucial for running a good, high quality council. It is important that all of us are held to account for the decisions that we make and the policies that we wish to bring into effect. Which means that we asked for the CFGS to come in and review our scrutiny procedures, and they produced this report, and they also gave us a presentation on it. And the recommendations from that report are given in the paper. I think this paper then went to the scrutiny committee itself, And I was hoping that Councillor Wiley would be here as chairman of that committee to actually comment on it, but I can't see he's here. Is that correct? James, is he here?
No, Leader, he's not here from what I can tell.
Okay, all right. I think the comments that came back from scrutiny, as far as I understand them, were that they wanted the executive to endorse them, which I think we are more than happy to do. I think there are a couple of things in there that we probably need to discuss a little bit further. But one of the items that I think is important is that once a quarter, I meet the leaders of all parties. So with I meet the chairman and the deputy chair of Overview, and also PAGO, Audit and Governance, as it's now called. And we work through and look at what the scrutiny issues may be coming forward, because scrutiny is there to look forward and not necessarily to review what has happened. And what I'd like to do is enlarge that slightly, so that the chairman and the vice chairman of those committees actually come to meet the whole of the exec once a quarter at one of our weekly team meetings. I hope that will mean that there is a greater understanding of what we are all doing on the exec, as opposed to just my view of things or Councillor Williamson's view of things. And I think if that is acceptable, then I would ask that Lorraine works with Katie to get those dates in the diary. Are there any comments from anyone who sits on Overview Scrutiny? No. Okay, in that case, if we go...
Councillor Buckmaster and Councillor Rutland Barsby have got their hands up, Leader.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not picking up raised hands at the moment. So if I could go to Councillor Rutland Barsby and then to Councillor Eric Buckmaster.
Thank you, Leader. Just noting recommendation B, following on from that, well, before that, I have researched some bespoke training for the scrutiny committees, taking into account the review. The Centre for Governance and Scrutiny couldn't give us specific training to that review, and so that review was submitted to an external long recognised trainer for him to look at and to come up with some bespoke training for scrutiny members. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Rutland Barsby. Councillor Eric Buckmaster.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, just following on a little from what Councillor Rutland Barsby said. I remember my scrutiny training very fondly from when I first joined the council, and it was very interesting. It's a very important role. It's being a critical friend was the phrase that I certainly remember. With regard to the review itself, there are a couple of things on page 95 which are the really key things for me, and which I think need to be the focus. It is focusing on less rather than more, in a sense, and it's looking at the strategic issues. So as you were saying, Leader, early on, it's looking forward and being part of the whole planning policy process. But the other side of the coin then is the taking the executive members or holding them to account. And that is, again, very specific, rather than looking at the whole of a portfolio, but really to say, we want to look at this particular aspect of policy, how it's working, could it be improved, what could you have done better? So I think there are some very important points in there which I think we could all do well to adopt. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, Councillor Buckmaster's managed to take a lot of the points I was planning to make, though, as a member of ONS. I just wanted to reiterate the comments that were made there, particularly regarding scrutiny functioning as a critical friend. The ONS committee is here to help the executive, to work with the executive to improve improve our policies, make them even better. It's not sort of a hostile. A committee shouldn't be seen that way, and I think that's one of the the key takeaways from this is that we're here to work constructively with the executive throughout the policy making and policy reviewing process.
No, very well put, Councillor Curtis. I couldn't agree more with the comments you've made, so thank you for making them. Are there any other blue hands up? I can't see any.
No, Leader.
Okay. Okay, so I am happy to propose these two recommendations on page 93. Councillor Williamson.
I'm very happy to second, Leader.
Okay, so we'll take A and B on block. Please, can I ask the executive to raise a hand if they are in agreement? Okay.
That looks to be
It looks to me as though everyone's voted. Is that right, William?
That's right, Leader. Yeah.
Okay, and it's carried. Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Okay, well, thank you for that. And we look forward as an executive to working closely with the overview and scrutiny, which is a real scrutiny committee, and also Mark's audit and governance, which again is very important in making sure that we keep all of us in line. So the agenda item now is an update from overview scrutiny. I think unless anyone wishes to say anything, Councillor Wiley is not with us, so we'll leave that agenda item. Councillor Pope, can you update us for audit and governance, which I believe you met last week?
Yeah, we met on the 16th of March. The committee reviewed reports from both the shared anti-fraud service and also the shared internal audit service, including reviewing the 21-22 internal audit plan and the 21-22 anti-fraud plan, as we would normally do at this time of year. As Councillor Williamson mentioned, the committee received a report on financial monitoring as at the 31st December 2020, where it was noted that the forecast outturn as at that date predicted an overspend of over £159,000. The capital budget was also considered, and it was noted that out of a total budget of 64.3 million, some 27.4 million was estimated to be carried forward to future years. As Councillor Williamson mentioned, the level of the council's debtors was discussed, and it was confirmed that as part of the year-end close down, all services would be asked to review the level of debt that was more than 90 days old to assess its collectability. All proposed write-offs, as was mentioned earlier, will be submitted to the executive for approval. The Audit and Governance Committee endorsed this approach. The committee also undertook its annual review of the council's risk management strategy, and it also reviewed the strategic risk register for Q3, including reviewing the proposed new format of the risk register. It was agreed that the new format represented a significant improvement on the previous format. In particular, it said the way it was set out was much clearer, and it was much more coherent and easy to understand for the committee. Lastly, the committee reviewed the latest version of the Model Councillor Code of Conduct that was released by the LGA in January. After discussion, it was agreed to recommend to Council that the current member Code of Conduct, as contained in Part 5A of this Council's Constitution, be replaced by the latest version of the Model Councillor Code of Conduct, subject to an amendment concerning the granting of a dispensation where a councillor might have a DPI or other interest. Lastly, the committee's work programme was reviewed. It was agreed that the council's data protection officer will be invited to a future meeting. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pope. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Councillor Pope on his report? No? Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
I have not been alerted of any urgent business, which means that the meeting of the executive finishes tonight at 19:26. Have a good evening, everybody. It's still light out there and it's still fairly warm, so go and have a good evening. Good night.
Bye.